for me personally is in this park. It's actually coming up on here on the right here. And if any of you have been to Kings Island in the past couple of years, things like that, you'll know what this is. This is actually their original turkey cart. And the reason I put this here is that this was the first job I ever had. When I first worked for Cedar Fair, I worked in food service. My first day, they put me on this is what they call a cart. And so essentially, usually it's a single person operating a small booth, usually of food or some, concessions or something like that. And so this was my first job, and this is essentially how this cart was set up. There was a little register over here, and we had a grill, like an open grill here, that we'd throw our turkey legs on, and then we'd have some sort of bins back here to keep food warm, things like that, until we were ready to sell it. Later on, they did sell drinks here, so I did put a gulpy soda holder there, and some tread plates to kind of make sure you don't slip back here. This was my first job, and I remember my first day. This is one of the reasons I did want to do this episode, just to kind of stream, so I can kind of explain what I did at Cedar Fair and what some of my stories there. My first day at Kings Island, I thought it was a summer job. I'm like, it's gonna be warm, it's gonna be hot. I figured I'd be okay without any overcoat or anything like that. So the uniform they gave us was a plaid button-up shirt, and then we had navy shorts, a navy apron, and a navy hat. And we had to bring our own slip-resistant shoes, and those were usually black. So summer wear, maybe not the flannel, but my first day, I was standing on this cart here, had turkey legs on the grill, things like that. If I'm not mistaken, it was 41 degrees, it was snowing, and people in the park were wearing their parkas. And I'm sitting out there in shorts, grilling turkey legs. I will never forget that day, because I remember, I don't know how many people came up to me that day and asked me if I was cold. And while I was a little bit cold, the grill was pretty hot. I mean, this whole part here, it's a little under-detailed. This is all metal, and so it radiated heat very well. And so, if you stood anywhere in this little cart area, you were warm. So yeah, this was that's my first job. I remember that so vividly, and that's something I always told in trainings, because I actually used to do food service training as well. My third year I worked there, I actually was in the trainings themselves, and I teach cash handling procedures and things like that. But I also told stories like this to new associates to kind of give them an idea of what they're going to face out there. And that one I always get, like, you can probably never have more of a worst first day than I did, because I was just almost frozen by the time I was done. But yeah, so this is also the first blueprint I ever made in Planet Coaster, so it kind of holds a little bit more significance like that as well. We also have some nice condiments out here and a trash can, but this coaster actually interacts with itself. And so if you don't know what coaster interaction is when a coaster comes close to a path or another ride, and riders on those rides can kind of see each other, and they'll, even if it's for a brief moment. I didn't plan this originally. I happened to actually look at it one time, and these coasters were actually interacting with each other. So you'll see here, these coasters pretty much pass each other at the exact same point. We'll kind of follow the coasters here as they're kind of racing over these two hills, which I think is great. It looks great. If this was a real coaster, people would, see this rather well. And when they come down this hill here, their first hill, they come down through this double helix. At the end of the ride, there's actually a long sweeping corner. And I think they kind of look like they're racing each other, which I thought was kind of neat. It was something that I didn't plan on doing, but just so happened that it worked out that way. Here in a bit, I kind of want to explain what this is. So this is the first big coaster they would have invested in, probably in the late 70s, early 80s. And I've called this ride Shockwave, and you guys can tell this is an aero corkscrew coaster. This is actually based on one of my favorite aero coasters, and it was called Vortex. It was at Kings Island. Didn't work in the merchandise there. I don't think there was a merchandise shop for that one. But it was a record-breaking coaster. It was the tallest full-circuit looping coaster at the time, and it also was the first coaster to go upside down 6 times. And so the layout is almost identical to Vortex's. The only difference is the first hill here. So it goes up this hill here and down. On the Vortex, this would have come to the right first, and then, or to the left first, and then turned to the left up and around this hill, and then this would have connected over to the loops here. That's really the only difference in this ride than the actual Vortex. It's got 2 loops in it. It does have 2 corkscrews, and it does have this. We always call it the Iron Butterfly, but I've also heard it called a Batwing. There's a couple different versions of this. Essentially, it's a half loop, a half corkscrew, another half corkscrew, and then another half loop. Then it goes into a 360, and then back into the station here. This ride is one of my favorites, one of my first big coasters you rode. Kind of, you would grow up, you would have, all these kiddie rides you would go ride. There were some coasters there, but this was kind of the first big one, along with the Beast at Kings Island. So I really love this ride. I actually got this done. I had done the layout for it, loved how it looked, and so I decided I was going to do custom supporting. Don't know what that is. Custom supports are, if you see here, these are kind of the normal in-game supports. And I didn't do that for some of the ride, but I'm like, you know what, I'm going to, there's a couple things on the Theme Maker's Toolkit that actually had the Aerodynamics, which is the company who made the coaster. They actually had their supports out there. I'm like, you know what, I really want to use those for the ride. So I did a lot of this in their structure here, and I think it makes it look really nice. It's kind of a sad thing though, because I had just got this done. It just, I loved how it looked, loved the paint scheme and things like that. And about a week later, they announced they were actually going to close and tear down the Vortex. And it just sucked. I remember when they said that, it was like September, October. And I'm like, man, this really sucks. This was only happened last year. So, it really does, it was just like one of the things like, bam, we're just going to close it. Nothing really, nothing fancy about it. They were just going to tear it down. And I had just got this thing done. So it was kind of sad because like I had just got this whole coaster done based on this one, and now it's going to be gone. And I think it's already gone already. I could be wrong. So what I did is, if you can see here, let me zoom in just a little bit more. The coaster trains are actually painted like the Vortex, the purple and orange, which is great. I love the color scheme, how it looked, but I did the blue and orange for the Shockwave. So I think that's kind of my tribute to that ride. I kind of like how it looks. And I think a lot of this is based on it. The station's very similar. Where the pull-off tracks are very similar. They actually can store all 3 trains in the station here. So that looks really nice. So this is kind of the next area. This would have been like the 80s section around this bathroom here. And it's just a bathroom, but I absolutely love it. And it seems really odd. Why in the world would I love a bathroom? Well, I used to stare at this bathroom quite a bit because this bathroom is actually based on the one right across the street from where I used to work. Right about here, maybe a little bit further, maybe right in here. This is actually where the original turkey cart for Kings Island was. And so this was the bathroom directly across the street. So when I was working turkey cart, this is one of the few places you actually could look. There was a sign to another part of the park there, and behind me was a restaurant. And so this is pretty much my view for 8 or 10 hours was this restroom. And I love how it looked, and I don't know why. There actually is vending machines out there. There's drinking fountains out there. Everything is, almost perfect. It's plain, and it looks like what I was going for, and that's all I wanted it to be. And for some reason, every time I come over here, I love just this looking at this bathroom because it's funny and it's boring and it's great, and it is a functioning bathroom too. I love how I got all this roof detail in here of the drinking fountains and how all this actually came together. Funny enough, I actually used to work behind this as well. If you actually look at this at Kings Island, to the left here is a store called I think it's called Candy Confections. That was the second place I ever managed at Kings Island. There was a store here, then it was Coney Potato Works, which is now called Coney Barbecue. If you're ever actually in the park now, I know it's closed, but hopefully they're reopening soon. Before Coney Barbecue, there was a place called Coney Potato Works. That was the first place I ever managed in food service. On the other side of that was a place called Attitudes, and those 2 stores were connected. So I used to be in the real back area like this quite a bit often. This is kind of I've seen this bathroom from both sides. It's like, all right, cool. So it brings back a lot of memories, I guess you could say.